Dr. Selebano, you're still under your previous oath to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Mr. Cook?
Justice Moseneke, it is not entirely clear to us what the procedure to be followed is in this matter, and I just want to place on record some of the recent background. As you are aware, my client is here under subpoena. That subpoena was issued by the government, a party to this process. My client objected to the subpoena and sought to have it set aside in the High Court, as I believe you are aware. That application was unsuccessful. A judgment was granted yesterday, dismissing that application. I came into the matter thereafter, so I am not steeped in the matter, but I have had the opportunity to read some of the papers and to consult with my client. The basis for the objection to the subpoena was that this process, properly construed, was not an arbitration in terms of the Arbitration Act. The court found against my client on that score and held that indeed this process is an arbitration, and therefore under the Arbitration Act a subpoena is competent. And as you are well aware, under the Arbitration Act, a subpoena can be issued as one would do in a civil trial. And if one is dealing with an arbitration akin to a civil trial, the evidence that is admissible is evidence which is relevant to a dispute in issue. I've read the terms of reference in this matter, and it's not clear to me with respect what issues are in dispute in relation to which this witness can testify. What may well be construed as being in dispute is the question of compensation, and at the end of the day, unless there's an agreement on that score, you may be called upon to make an award in that regard, which the families may well accept, and that will become a binding finding and a binding award on them. I do not see that my client can be of any assistance to this dispute resolution process in regard to the question of compensation. My client does not wish to be obstructive, and what my client does wish to say, having been sworn in and being here under compulsion, under subpoena, is he does want to say something to the families in the form of an apology. You have seen from the interview which was conducted by Professor Makaba, the Ombud, that my client admitted quite clearly that as the head of department, he took responsibility and that he was accountable for what happened. That is at pages 51 and 52 of the record of the interview with Professor Makaba. So he acknowledges his role as head of the department and his responsibility in that capacity. He also would like to apologize to the families, as I've said, for what has occurred. But he also has some other interests that he needs to protect. He has been suspended. He is facing disciplinary proceedings, and he is facing also the possibility of criminal proceedings. And that is why he sought to exercise his constitutional rights to have the subpoena set aside unsuccessfully. And that is why today I am here to protect him and to make sure that his constitutional rights are observed. And so I would ask from you, because it is not clear to us what the procedure is, to make a directive or a ruling on how this witness is to be approached and what issues he is going to be examined on. Because the question of accountability of the government for what has happened is not in issue. If you look at the terms of reference, it is quite clearly stated that the government accepts a liability to the families for what has happened. The terms of reference also contemplate that that the government would lead witnesses on various aspects which are canvassed in the terms of reference, and to the extent that that has been done, I gather it has been done to some extent, so be it. This witness, however, cannot contribute in my submission any further to the question of liability, which is not an issue in these proceedings.
Mr. Cook, are we arguing the application to set aside the subpoena again, are we?
No, Justice Moseneke. I'm accepting the finding that this is an arbitration, and the line that I'm taking is that if it is an arbitration, it is akin to a civil trial. There is a subpoena that has been issued under the Arbitration Act, and that the witness must be examined on relevant issues in the arbitration.
You see, when cross-examination travels beyond the borders of relevance, it's my task to determine that.
Yes.
So I don't understand to what end are these submissions. In any arbitration, there would be issues in dispute. And here, the big issue, there are several issues in dispute.
Yes.
The one, overarching one, is equitable redress. Parties can't agree on what should be the content of equitable redress.
Yes.
And as you've seen in the arbitration agreement, also called terms of reference, the parties hope that the arbitrator will make a binding award under the Arbitration Act, which, barring it being set aside in some way, the government will have to make good, will have to pay up.
Yes.
But it's not only about money, it's about, as the arbitration concept, there's a difference about what else besides money ought to constitute equitable redress. And that is my task, to determine that as arbitrator. So are we at a stage where you're seeking to limit the questions that we put to the witness? I'm uncertain to what end is the submissions you are making.
Justice Moseneke, shortly before the commencement, we were approached by Patrick Ngochana, who wished to interview my client, and we said we had no difficulty, and we had a short meeting. And then we were summoned because the hearing was about to commence. I understand that he is one of the evidence leaders appointed by you. Now, he's not a party to the proceedings, so he would be an inappropriate person to lead this witness. He asked me if I intended to lead the witness, and I said I did not, because the witness is here under subpoena, and the subpoena is that of the government. So it would seem to me that the appropriate person to question this witness would be the representative of the government, and I would ask you to rule that is so. And I would, and I address you on the question of the issues, so that there may be some sort of clarity from my client's perspective and from mine as well, in order to protect him in this process, what those issues are which are going to be traversed. And if it is equitable redress and compensation, so be it, I accept it.
No, I mean, relevant cross-examination always, and evidence always would go to relevance and credit.
Yes.
And whether or not a matter is relevant to the dispute, indeed it is conditioned by the dispute between the parties.
Yes.
Normally set out in pleadings.
Yes.
The parties chose not to exchange pleadings, but to write up an agreement. Now, and the dispute is quite clear from the agreement. Essentially, the arbitrator is required to determine equitable redress, which is a wider concept than merely compensation.
Yes.
And you can't do that unless you know what happened. So to the extent that what happened informs the quantum of the damages, even where merits have been considered as now, I have the task to hear out, and the parties are entitled to call witnesses who will tell the arbitrator what happened. So to that extent, I don't think we should. You are here. You're welcome to sit here for the day. You have no formal role. You're only counsel to the witness. And if at some point you seek to object to some matter, you'll direct that to me. But Dr. Selebano is a witness, and he should be asked and dealt with as any other witness to the extent that the questions are relevant. If any matter he thinks might incriminate him, is entitled to raise that point, I will hear him out and make a decision on that particular matter. Again, I still don't understand to which end are your submissions.
Justice Mosneki, I accept what you say. I was seeking clarity really on what the issues are that are going to be traversed so that I could take that into account in the conduct of this examination of my client.
Yes. And you see, Mr. Cook, also, I'm delighted that you warned us that Dr. Selebano will assume responsibility for what has happened and that he would want to apologize.
Yes.
All that is a legitimate part of this process, because the arbitrator is called upon to determine equitable redress, which will inevitably include, I know you commercial lawyers think it's only money, but inevitably includes an apology. It inevitably includes possibly counseling. In this setting, it would include an order that a memorial be built, for instance, an order that certain things, where there's a dispute between the government and the parties, should be done, and the government be ordered to do.
Yes.
All those make his evidence crucial. And if there is any derogation from fairness, I'm here to look after him.
Thank you, Justice.
That is my primary task.
I accept that.
To ensure there's fairness towards Dr. Selebano and to any other witness and the parties. Very well. Is there any other submissions or matter you'd like to?
Do I take it that the government will then lead Mr. Selebano as the party subpoenaing him, or?
It is their witness, rightly so, because this is an arbitration sui generis.
Yes.
Which some people confuse with a commission. Certainly not. There's a dispute, there are issues, there's money to be awarded, and if other ancillary matters to be awarded, which government will be obliged to make good. So it is an arbitration in every sense, but it's sui generis because it has soft issues about life and death.
Yes, no, we accept that.
Sure. So we are going to start and go ahead. If there's any moment where you think there is a matter you want to draw to my attention, you're more than welcome to raise it. But ordinarily, I will decide whether or not a question is fair or unfair, and whether or not the question is relevant to the dispute between the parties, i.e., what equitable redress should ensue from these proceedings. And rightly so, the merits have been conceded. So we're really dealing with what happened in order to determine how much and what other ancillary remedies would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Well. On the second question about who's going to lead the witness has been subpoenaed by the state. We've developed a practice where we would have evidence leaders, particularly on matters which might be necessary but which are really neutral to each of the parties' positions. If your submission is that in law who should lead the witness, clearly it's the state, and I'll invite state counsel to do so.
Thank you, Justice Moffatt.
Now, before I call this to an end, obviously there are parties to this proceedings. So my ruling is really preliminary. start with you, counsel. Is there any submissions you'd like to make on what has been put before me by Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Justice Moseneke. This has taken us by surprise. We didn't have any warning that these submissions would be made by our colleague. We would have appreciated the courtesy of a heads up, even if it was on late notice. Justice, I don't wish to repeat what you've said, but as far as the nature of these proceedings go, there are several issues in dispute, and the facts are inextricably intertwined with what is a just and equitable remedy in the circumstances. The just and equitable remedy is also wide-ranging and may have many elements. And so I would hope that the process of cross-examination will continue as it has been throughout these proceedings for all of the witnesses. And I have no objection to the state, of course, leading the witness as requested by my learned friend. And subject to those factors, we're happy to proceed.
Very well. Thank you, Advocate.
Thank you, Justice
Advocate
Moseneke.
Krause,
We have nothing to add.
which means what? You agree with your colleague or you disagree with her?
I've heard what you've said, Justice, and we've nothing to add to what you have said, and we're definitely not in disagreement with that.
Okay,
Court, please.
do very well. We follow that. Advocate Groenewald?
Well, Justice, my first request would be that we take up our rightful seat that we should. Apart from that, Justice, we stand by the preliminary views of yourself, Justice, on this issue, and we support the views of our colleagues, and we submit that we are ready to proceed on the basis as we've done before and previously with other witnesses.
Thank you. Advocate Kuchana?
Thank you, Justice Moseneke. We also align ourselves with the views expressed by our colleagues on this issue. What has been done, as my colleague for Section 27 has said, is in accordance with the terms of reference and the pre-arbitration minute. We have not departed from those terms. Thank you, Justice.
Advocate Utama?
Thank you, Justice. I must state at the outset that what my learned friend has submitted in his submission on behalf of Dr. Selebano are submissions which we have had in the High Court when the subpoena was challenged. And those issues have been dealt with. So there is no point for us to re-argue whether this is an arbitration or not. A finding has been made, and Dr. Selebano is before these proceedings pursuant to a subpoena which has been issued. And he cannot be treated any different from all other witnesses that has been before these proceedings. What we need to say is that the parties have concluded an arbitration agreement which seeks to regulate how the proceedings are to be conducted. And pursuant to that, there has been a pre-arbitration minute which has been concluded, further regulating the manner in which the proceedings will have to be conducted. Absent any amendment to those two documents which regulate these proceedings, we should proceed in the same format and manner in which we have been conducting these proceedings. And I should emphasize that the representatives of Dr. Selebano do not have any platform in these proceedings to deal with these matters. It is for the witness. It is for the witness to answer to questions which are being put to him. And as Justice has indicated, if any issues relating to relevance arise, then that determination will have to be made. It is not for you, Justice, to deal with matters which have been settled by the High Court. And what we want to say is that in terms of the arbitration agreement, the parties to these proceedings, and I must pause to state that Dr. Selebano is not a party to that arbitration agreement. He's been called here as a witness. So what I want to highlight is that the parties have agreed for the appointment of evidence leaders, which has been agreed. And that aspect about evidence leaders was argued on behalf of Dr. Selebano, but such argument could not assail him from coming to these proceedings. Therefore, we should not go back and deal with those matters. The evidence leaders having been agreed to assist in these proceedings, I submit that we should proceed with these proceedings in terms of the arbitration agreement and in terms of clause 11 of the pre-arbitration minute. And there is no reason why that procedure, which has been agreed upon, should be departed from because Dr. Selebano is being represented. We all welcome the presence of his legal team to observe the proceedings as they unfold, but they don't have a platform as the witness can answer questions for himself. He has acknowledged that.
No, we have long agreed. We've been together for 4 weeks now. No heckling, no applause, no shouting down of anybody. If we are to proceed properly, if you like a submission, show a broad smile to yourself, but no applause and no heckling, please. Please do proceed, Councillor.
Yes. What we have had submissions being made on behalf of Dr. Selebano is that he has accepted responsibility and is willing to testify. That is precisely the reason why he has been called to come before these proceedings. And on that note, that's how these proceedings should be proceeded with. And on another aspect, on whether there is a dispute or whether Dr. Selebano will not assist on the issues relating to compensation, it is neither here nor there. Those issues have been dealt with. We all know what are the issues involved and what is the relevance of his testimony. And I should put it on record that the parties or the claimants in these proceedings have set out their claims, which are supposed to be considered for determination by you as the arbitrator. They have set out what their claims are. And the impression is being made that because there are no statements of claim, therefore there is no dispute. That aspect was dealt with in the pre-arbitration minute, and subsequent to that minute, the claimants have set out their statements of claim, just as a point of clarity to clear off that confusion of the absence of statements of claim on behalf of the claimants. And it is on that note that we submit that the witness, having been sworn in, should be dealt with in the same manner as all other witnesses. And it will be on that note that we will hand over the witness to the evidence leaders as per the arbitration agreement for them to lead this witness. Thank you, Justice.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, for what it is worth, you've got a right of reply. You've heard submissions of the parties to the dispute. Is there anything at all you'd like to say before I make
Justice Moseneke, just very
final ruling? Yes.
Very briefly, yes. I thought it would have been reasonably clear from my submissions that I accept the finding of the court that this is an arbitration. And I addressed you on the basis that this is an arbitration. And on the basis that it is an arbitration, a party to an arbitration is entitled to lead a witness. A party to this arbitration has subpoenaed a witness. It is that party who must lead the witness. That's my submission. Thank you.
Yes, and the answer to that is there is a pre-arbitration hearing minute in which the parties have agreed that evidence leaders may lead witnesses as and when they so decide not to lead the witnesses. So there is the answer to that point, is that it is settled amongst the parties. And is there any reason why I shouldn't proceed precisely the same way that we have up to now?
Justice Moseneke, if that is your ruling, I'll abide by it.
That indeed it is. I think we've got to invite the evidence leader to lead this witness, and all the other parties will have an opportunity to cross-examine the witness. And again, if there is any dispute as to relevance, and it arises often here, one party pops up and says, and raises the point, and like in any other tribunal, I would apply my mind to the submissions and make a ruling, or defer the ruling to the end of the hearing. And if at any point you think it is necessary for you to draw my attention to some matter, you are welcome to do so.
Thank you.
But I must alert you right now that in the normal course, I will direct the proceedings, and the witness will have the protections that any other witness would have, no more and no less. Very well. Shall we swap seats around you so that your colleague, Advocate Groenewald, could participate in the cross-examination?
Yes.
He's seated, yes. Advocate Nguchana, you may lead the witness.
Thank you, Justice Moseneke. Dr. Selebano, you have been called here as a witness for the arbitration to explain to us on what had occurred leading to the implementation of the project now commonly called the Gauteng Mental Health Marathon Project.
That's correct.
Do you understand the project?
I know the project.
Okay. And during the period of, let me start at the beginning. When were you appointed as the HOD of the Department of Health, Gauteng?
I was initially the Deputy Director General, and then I think on the 1st of May, if I'm not correct.
1st of May, which year?
2015.
2015. Did you not start acting in 2014?
I was the DDG, then I acted, then I was appointed as...
And which years? Can you tell us?
2014, I was acting from around September.
Around September.
Yeah.
Then you were permanently appointed as the HOD of the department when? Which year?
1st of May, 2015.
1st of May 2015. Yeah. So when this project commenced, you were the responsible accounting officer for the department.
Yes, I was the accounting officer in the department.
And you had intimate knowledge of this project.
I knew the project.
You knew the project, okay. Then let's start from the beginning. How was this and when was this project conceived?
As far as I knew, after the project has long been in operation at a lower level where patients would be discharged from life esteem.
Yes.
Yeah, it preceded my time.
Preceded your time. Let me direct you now. On 29th September 2015, there was a letter authored by you. It's in one of the bundle of documents. It's a notice of cancellation of a contract between the Department of Health and Life as a Domain. And the specific volume of the documents or files is on file 8, page 2830.
Where should I check?
Page 2830, it's at the
28.
top right of the page.
Dr. Selebano, I'm going to ask you to speak into the mic
Okay,
and as volubly as you can.
I'll do that, Judge.
Thank you.
2830, you say?
Yes.
Okay, I'm there.
Are you there?
That's right, I'm there.
Are you familiar with this document, with this letter? A signature appended to it appears on page 2832.
That's my signature. Yes.
That's your signature. And what is that letter for the record?
Well, that is the termination of contract between Department of Health and Life as Domain.
And why did you issue that notice to terminate the contract?
I was advised by the managers from legal department, from finance, from mental health, that this is the right letter, sign it.
Just explain, I don't understand. You were advised that you must sign this letter. Who authored the letter?
Well, do you want me to explain how government works? I can do that.
Yes, I want to know.
If there's a matter, the managers will discuss the matter, then they will sit down and then they write the letter for the eyes of the HOD, and they will say, HOD, we have written a letter, go through the letter, and subsequently then I will sign the letter.
One of my colleagues has requested that you speak a little bit louder. Okay. She can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I was saying that ordinarily HOD wouldn't write the letters. The managers themselves would write the letter.
Yes.
And then they'll bring the letter and say, as you know, this is the letter, and discuss it with me, and then I append the letter. So I know this letter.
Yes. And what is reflected in that letter would be a decision of the department.
Correct.
And when was the decision taken? And who took that decision?
Please explain properly. When you mean is who took the decision?
Yes, to terminate that contract.
I might not be able to give you the specific day and time in terms of saying so and so took a decision. It was a department that discussed contracts, and Life as Domain was part of that discussion.
Yes.
It's not the only contract, and then a decision was taken.
And what were the reasons for the termination, I'm sorry?
Of this particular contract?
Correct.
Several reasons. The fiscus was under pressure, it's true. And also there were supply chain issues where apparently the contract has been there since the days of Dr. Rina Fenter, I was told. So it has been a long-standing contract which has continuously been, what word can I use? You know, on a monthly basis, it's renewed. And I'm told by my colleagues that the Auditor General had raised issues around that. But there was also, more than anything, a fiscal pressure on the department.
I don't understand by the fiscal pressure. What do you mean specifically in relation to this contract?
The contract has been there, and there was a certain amount. I think, I'm not too sure. I don't want to speculate on the exact amount. And it was felt that, like I said, it was not the only contract. There were other contracts. The CLB contract, for instance. So it was one of the contracts where it was discussed and decided that this is what we should do. We should find the same way of getting the same value, but at a lesser cost.
Doctor, you're going to discover in your stay in the box that I like direct speech. The cat drinks the milk. In other words, it's helpful for evidence to have the subject, the action, the verb, and the object, if any. It was decided, it was considered, it was. If you could just tell us the actors, it will just be that much clearer every time. I'm saying it in generic terms, and there'll be more questions asked, but just keep that in mind that the passive voice usually obfuscates, and direct voice makes us understand clearly who were the actors and what did they do. You may proceed. There's no specific question, but it's a style of response which I'm asking you resort to.
I'll try hard to be direct.
Thank you.
Yes. And yes, you indicate that it was decided, that is by the department, and you advised to write on this letter. But I think I'm still not clear, that is on the specifics behind the reasons which you indicate on fiscal pressure, that you wanted to move them from life as the many and to somewhere else where they will receive the same quality of assistance. What are you trying to say about that? Are you trying to say that the department was unable at the time to keep up with the payments to life as the main, or what are you saying exactly?
No. It's known that the Department of Health has serious pressures because of the demand. I mean, there's inward migration inside Gauteng. So it's the reality that the department faces. It's a reality that with the little resources the department has, you find that we're under pressure. We're under pressure to provide services, and the Treasury then would advise, I would sit with the HODs, and they would advise and say, listen, we must find ways of getting the same. I mean, economics is it's a study of scarcity. Getting the same value, but at a reasonable resources, using less resources.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to say.
And prior to doing that, I take it that you received advices on what will be the reasonable costs of the same service somewhere else.
Yeah, not to the micro detail, but you know, I mean, when I represent the department at Treasury or anywhere else, they say, listen, the fiscus is under pressure. We're not going to increase any amount of money. You're going to have to do exactly the same things that we've been doing with less money. That has been the overriding. You can ask any HOD in the country, they'll tell you, is the overriding issue.
Yes. Now that you had reached that stage, you had decided that we are going to cancel and we are going to provide the same service to these patients somewhere else. How was that project going to be implemented?
Yeah. Well, then there was a plan to augment that, the process.
Tell us, what was the plan?
Well, like I say again, granular, I'm not obfuscating, Justice, please understand. At a granular level, sometimes, as an HOD, you can call in HOD. At a micro level, sometimes the HOD wouldn't know. But there was a plan to say, let me give you a broad guidelines of the plan.
Correct.
The patients, after this, Life Estimate said, give us 6 months. And then, if you can see it, it gave a 6 months period. And then the managers, the directorate, mental health directorate, said, okay, this is how we're going to move patients. We're going to, no, they wouldn't just give the detail of saying we're going to this patient and that patient, but they would say, we will then go out there, use our own NGOs that we have, and then we will move the patients to those NGOs.
Who made the plan which was presented to you?
It was made by the Mental Health Directorate.
Yes.
And who in the Mental Health Directorate made their presentation?
The representative of that would be the director, which is Dr. Manamela. But she was working with a team.
So she hatched the plan on moving and presented it to yourself. You know by now we do have the plan bearing her signature, and it's part of the evidence, the plan which was presented. Is that correct?
It would be correct, but I hear you said she hatched the plan, but it would have been a collective sitting, working out on a plan, and then they say, HOD, we have a plan. Can you agree with the plan or not agree with the plan?
Who would form the collective?
She's a director. She has, I wouldn't know them by name because of the distance. But these are your deputy directors, assistant directors, managers. I don't know them by name. It's not possible to know them by name.
Yes.
Proceed, counsel.
So Dr. Manamela was the team leader of this a team to implement the project plan.
Well, she presented the plan, and then if you want us to fast track, then there were meetings, and there was, okay.
We'll come to that, yeah. And let me refer you to the same bundle of documents on page 2789. And I want you to confirm whether that was the plan they presented to you for your approval.
This is 2015.
2789.
No, I'm saying this would be in 2015. So you'd appreciate that I can guardedly say, yes, this would probably be the plan. Yeah. There would be no reason not to say it's not.
And on
You can
page
take time to look at it. We need your confirmation that that is the plan.
The project team and support team. Yeah, in the justice, I would say yes.
and on page let me focus your attention on page 2824. There are several signatures there, 3 of them.
That's right. Yeah, the other one is mine in October.
And which signifies that you had approved the plan.
The plan, that's right.
Okay.
The words approved by are used on page 2824.
That's right.
What does that signify?
In
Are you the most senior authority to say yes? What does it mean?
In government, when, again, let me try and explain how, when there's a submission, this we would call a submission, the managers would then write the submission, and then they would say, written by so-and-so, and then you take it to the next, that's the bureaucracy. Next level, recommended by so-and-so or supported by so-and-so. It will then go through the bureaucracy, and the last person who must get the wheel going is the HOD. Then it's approved by the HOD.
And it's open to the HOD to say yes or no, is it?
Yes.
And could the plan be implemented before the HOD says yes?
I didn't hear properly.
Could the plan, as the plan now before us, on page 2789, ending on 2824, be implemented without the approval of the HOD?
No, you can't. But the difficulty that any HOD would have is that if the managers are saying, remember, they are the actual workforce, the heartbeat of the department. If they say, we are satisfied, we are happy that this will work, you are hard-pressed as an HOD to say no. Why would you say no?
Yes, but I'm saying, as a power question, if you read it and didn't like it, it's open to you as HOD to say nay. Do you understand
I understand that.
the power
Yes,
issue correctly?
correctly.
The hierarchy issue.
Hierarchy.
Thank you.
Yes. And in terms of the responsibilities as well, seeing that the ultimate responsibility to approve it was on the HOD, where would the ultimate responsibilities for the successes or the failures of this project lie? Would it be similarly on the HOD?
Yes and no. The yes part is that once you have approved, then you take accountability.
You take accountability.
Accountability. The no part would be if there's an implementation, in a generic sense now, if there's an implementation at an operational level, it is not possible that any HOD would be able to go there at an operational level.
Yes.
To say, the plan says A, you are now A1. So that's why I said yes and no.
Yes.
Approval, yes. Operation, it's different.
And let me give you this example, I think, in relation to what you are saying. If at an operational level, the plan says you are going to take 500 patients from point A to point B for safety reasons, for many reasons, which would include safety, and you take 1,000 of them. And the fact that you took more than the permitted number, then it exposes, that is the manager or the lower level manager and so on. Where is the responsibility of the HOD there?
It's a deviation. If anything happens, then the HOD must then, remember, we are now talking in a generic sense here.
Yes.
Because if you look at the director, there'll be a director, a chief director, the DDG, then the HOD. I would probably, in a generic sense, insist that some form of action must be taken. Two, that's in a generic sense, but I wouldn't be the one as HOD doing it, because then I would be running a department in a micromanagement way, which this Department of Health, you can't do that. So if anything goes wrong, then the hierarchy will kick in, like you were saying, Justice, power. Then it will be the DDG or the chief director who must then take action.
And there is, all your team owe you the duty of reporting, don't they?
Yes.
And the power of the span of your administrative and executive power entitles you to call up any of them and say, what happened?
In the normal activity of things, as an you're asking me now as an HOD.
Yes.
I would be more careful never to jump my colleagues and go and call an assistant director. I can't do that. If I do that,
No, in the normal line.
In the
you,
normal
you, for instance, were entitled to call Dr. Manamela and say, Director, what happened?
no, I wouldn't. It's myself and the DGG for clinical services. That would be the guy that I would say, please intervene in this matter.
Who was the DDG for
It's
clinical
Dr. Lebet.
Dr. Lebete.
Yeah.
So ordinarily you would ask, if you're concerned, you
If
would
there are
ask
issues.
Dr. Lebete, what's happening?
Yes.
And what would he do? In turn, where would he inquire?
You see, it would depend again. He could ask the chief director. I mean, that's how, we may not like it, but that's how government works. The chief director, he may just say, okay, chief director, there's an issue here, please attend to it. Then the chief director would be the one who talks to the director. But in the normal activity of things, sometimes you don't want a simple thing. If there's a pen missing, I can't just go through that process. You just say, can you get this thing done quickly, please? Then it's done.
Right, I'm just trying to understand the lines of accountability.
Yeah, the hierarchy.
The flow of power, the hierarchy, who can ask who what to do and what not to do. So if something went amiss with the marathon project, you would ask Dr. Liberty to come and see you, and you'd say to him, what's happening?
That's right.
And he would move down the hierarchy to try and find out the facts.
That's right.
Counsel.
Yes, Justice, I'm not sure whether my colleague wanted to raise an issue.
Sorry, Justice. I don't know whether I've aged abnormally throughout this process, but I was having difficulty hearing the witness, and so it was simply just asking to speak up.
I'm so sorry, really. I
Okay,
really apologize. Okay, let me put it here.
Well, I can hear, which means you have been aging. But we'll ask again. I think Dr. Selebano wants to be cooperative. He's going to try and speak a little
Louder.
louder.
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's in order.
Yes, Justice Msanek. Yeah, you say if there are problems which you will pick up, you'll call Dr. Lebete, who, from your explanation, would be a line manager directly to you, reporting to you.
That's right.
And the one that reports directly to him, would it be Dr. Manamela or the chief director?
Chief director.
The chief director. Who is the chief director?
In that case, I think during that time it was Dr. Pilama Zamisa.
Pilama Zamisa.
Yeah.
While we talk about so many doctors, let's just clear it up. What are your qualifications?
I'm an MBCHB.
MBCHB.
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Science honors in biochemistry and an
BSc
MBCHB.
Honours Biochemistry and MBCHB.
That's right. And the other doctors
So
are
you are
also...
a penicillin doctor.
No, I'm an administrator.
You're an administrator.
Yes.
Okay, we'll come to that later. And Dr. Libete
He's an MBCHB.
Is an MBCHB.
And Dr. Mazamisa is in MBCHB also.
So you really are medical practitioners, clinicians in an administrative role.
I wouldn't say we're clinicians. Clinicians would be there to touching patients. We don't.
You qualified as doctors, but you are employed as executives.
Yes, as administrators. We call ourselves administrators.
Administrators.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you retain your registration?
We register every year.
So
You
you'd retain your professional registration?
It's a pride thing. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Then Dr. Mazamisa, who reports to Dr. Mazamisa?
You see, that's where now you'll get, there'll be other directorates
I think let's go
to this one in particular.
let's go to Dr. Manamela
It will be Dr.
and take it
Manamela
up directly to you,
It will be
because
It will be
she
Dr.
appears to
Manamela.
be the person who was leading the project from the onset.
It will be Dr. Manamela,
From Dr. Manamela to
Dr. Mazamisa,
Dr. Mazamisa
Dr. Lebete,
to Dr. Lebeta,
myself.
then to you. Right, thank you. And where does Mr. Mosenoche fit in this line?
No, he's a chief director for something else again. Here we're talking about hospital services.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
I
he's
see.
in planning.
So, if there were problems which you will pick up, and I'm sure you know by now that it is common cause that there were many problems which were picked up in the implementation of these problems,
That's correct.
of this project, I'm sorry. And how did you intervene in this?
Okay. When I got to know about the problems, I had discussions with the MEC.
Yeah, and when did you pick up this problem specifically? Which year?
This is 17, 16. Anything around, I stand corrected, Judge. I don't want to say that it's, you know, yeah. It should be anything around end of July, mid-July, end of July,
2016.
2016. Then I picked up that there were issues.
Yes.
So you
Now
want to,
that we're talking about the, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
no, no,
Yeah. Now that we're talking about the MEC, what was your reporting line, if any?
it's my immediate supervisor is the MEC, but ordinarily HODs are employed by the Premier.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, it's really difficult also.
Yes.
It's like the DGs in national, they support the cabinet minister, but they sign the contract with the president. It's almost the same.
Yeah. So you were employed and your letter of appointment would have been signed by or for the Premier.
By or for the Premier, that's correct.
And your political principal was the MEC.
MEC.
And at the time, what was the name of the MEC?
Qetani Mahlangu.
Ms. Qetani Mahlangu.
I'm sorry about that. Miss
Yes,
Qetani
let's
Mahlangu,
stay,
yes.
let's stay with
Yeah.
that decorum.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
There's a slippery slope. Very soon we'll be on first name terms and we'll
Yeah,
be
then it's a mess.
even more derogatory. So who would you operationally report to? For instance, when you signed the termination agreement, did you have to report to anybody about that decision?
No, I'm trying to work backwards. That the plan is signed, and it goes down to the managers, and they implement. Who do I tell? In the normal course of events, I would probably tell the MEC Qetani Mahlangu, Miss MEC Qetani Mahlangu.
Why is it not a matter of course, but probably? Are you obliged? In other words, I'm really asking, are you obliged to tell her, I'm going to terminate the life as a demanding contract?
Yeah, but you see, also that's why we need to go back. There had been discussions before, so she would have been aware that it goes back to what I said again, the fiscus issue and all that.
Sure.
And like I said, it was not the only contract.
But here, did you require her political approval?
No,
No.
no.
So the decision to terminate was the HOD's decision
The decision,
after the team had done all the spade work.
HODs signed and contracts, and sometimes if it's Vodacom, I'll sign the contract. If I cancel it, I'll sign. It's part of an administrative job.
So there was nothing to kick up politically. It was not to the one who employed you, not to the one who you report to politically. It was your decision.
It will hamstring the bureaucracy worse if we were to
Yes.
do that. It would be worse.
So it was a management decision, and it was made by you.
It's a management decision, an administrative decision, and I have to do it.
Yes,
Yes.
Council.
And you're still explaining when you first picked up problems with this project.
Yeah, like I said, because of time, I can't tell whether it was August, but I don't want to say that and come back and say, no, I'm sorry. But let's take it around August, late
Yes.
July, August. Then there were reports that were coming from the media. I think the other one that came out more justice was from the DA. And that's when, honestly, then I knew then that, whoa, there's a problem.
Yeah, let's take it by steps. You identified that there were problems with this project. What was the nature of these problems?
I got to know that there was a problem.
What was the nature of that?
Patients who had been moved, I prefer calling them patients, MCHU patients, that had been moved from life as demand, and some of them have demised. I got to know that.
Have demised.
Yes.
And where did they demise?
Well,
During the movement or at NGOs?
at NGOs,
or at hospitals?
At hospitals and NGOs, at
Yes.
both hospitals and NGOs.
And what was your intervention when you received these reports?
Okay, then immediately, it was, immediately, I remember very well, Justice, that I was then in contact with the minister, Dr. Aaron Motswaledi. And we spoke about it and said, you got to intervene. You must intervene. So that's when I ran around the province, if you want
Yes.
to know. I ran around the province, and I'm putting it again that I closed the NGOs myself. I closed the NGO. Why? The minister said, he called me Barney, he said, Barney, you go and close those NGOs. We cannot afford any other person to pass away. I hope he doesn't deny that, but that's what he said. He said, we can't afford. And I said, Minister, it will be difficult for me to close them. I need you to write a letter at least, because I can't take directives. That's how it works from the minister. Please write a letter to the MEC and inform her that you have made a decision that we must close this, some of these NGOs. And indeed, that letter was written, and I ran around, closed the NGOs.
Why did you go to the national minister and not to the MEC,
No.
Danny Masango?
I got a call from the minister myself.
Oh.
It wouldn't be, I can't say, sorry, minister, don't talk to me, talk to the
Or the
MEC.
minister phoned you?
Yes, and said, there's a situation, you know about it, you have heard about it in the media, move. And I said, I will move, minister, but you have to, at least so that it doesn't seem like I'm taking instructions all over. Talk to the ABC, write a letter to the MEC, instruct her, or inform her. I don't know how they talk, whether they instruct or inform. Then that's when I moved and I closed some of the NGOs.
And in these interventions, you actioned immediately when you picked up these problems. What was, what was the role of the MEC? What role did she play in this?
Well, you know, we were all running around. She was running in the province. I was running. We stopped everything. We stopped everything. Running around. I'm sure she was doing other political work. But for me, all that I had to do was to make sure that no one, I can't allow any other person now to lose their lives. So I ran around and closed them.
Yes. And this problem you say you picked up or received reports on were deaths at these NGOs. How many deaths at the time when you received this report were reported to you?
The reported deaths then was around 36 then, and that has been a moot point. But that is what we got at that time. Remember, I wouldn't know, like I said, again, Justice, you depend on other people to uplift the information to you. So that information actually I got from the MEC that it's around 36 patients who had passed away at that time. That's why I was careful about the time.
Mm. And
But why didn't you simply call Dr. Manamela or Dr. Libet and say, please come and tell me about this crisis?
It's an emergency. It was an emergency. We ran. I told them we're all running. I was running with them.
But did you call her in to get details of the deaths?
I think MEC called a meeting where the whole matter was discussed. Personnel was no longer interested in meetings. I just wanted to ensure that areas where there has been identified that there were problems, that I had to run there and save as much as possible.
Mm. Yeah, we'll come to the meetings you have not been interested in. So at the end of July, it's reported to you that the deaths at these NGOs were 36.
Yeah.
We have
Siabadinga,
no haggling
Siabatanda. I don't know where
whatsoever.
either. Sorry, Justice.
No problem.
There were two NGOs that had almost similar name. One was Siabatanda, one was Siabadinga. So I'm trying to recall. And then there was one Bokang or Bakang. And I took all those patients to Sterkfontein. And the Precious Angels patients,
But did you go to Siabadinga?
yeah, here, I went there personally. Sabadinga. Yeah, I think it's Sabadinga.
In Soweto.
In Soweto.
Okay.
I stand corrected on whether it's Sabadinga or Sabatanda. I stand
Yes.
corrected.
Okay, you can continue to count the NGOs you went to.
Yeah, and
Yes.
then there was another one at Denville. I think it was related to Precious Angels. I called, and I was with the managers. I called the CEO from Kalafong, the CEO from Pretoria West. I called the CEO from Pretoria District Hospital, and I said, and I also called the CEO from, we held a meeting at Vescopis on that Sunday morning. And I said, we've got to move the patients. We're going to have to take them from Precious Angel and distribute them amongst ourselves.
Yes. Then let me take you to, there are many passages of this. That is in the record of the interview we have had with the Health Ombud. And there is a document which has been circulated. I'm sure you have it in front of you.
Can we make sure it's put before the witness, please?
Okay.
Are you familiar with that document?
Yeah, yeah. The way it looks, it's
It says interview 62, number 62, Professor Malhapuru William Mahoba, and O in interview with Diego Ephraim Selebano,
that's right.
and that's you.
That's right. That's me.
And this is the interview I've had with the professor in November.
That's in November. That's right.
Okay. Let me take you to page 17 of the document.
I'm at page 17.
Yes, at the top there. Under Dr. Diego Selebano, you make reference to Sepong, and then you really spent there the following day. On Sunday, I came myself now.
Okay.
Then underneath, Professor N.W. Mahoba, okay. Then I draw your attention to, again, where it says Dr. Diego Selebano, line 4. And I called all the CEO when I picked up, there were issues, and I said, we are moving patients from Precious Angels.
That's right.
You see that?
That's what I said. Yeah.
So that's what you said to the professor.
Yeah.
Then further down there, under line 15, 16, under line 17,
15. Yes.
you say, well, Professor, I realize that we are in a bad situation with NGOs. Whatever we do, either way we are in trouble. So I had, and I moved them from not only Precious Angel only, I moved some, and I will tell you why I moved them. I took some to Kalafong because people do not even know that. And is this you
Yeah.
telling the professor this?
Yeah.
And what is the bad situation with NGOs you are referring to?
No, no,
there?
no, no. We're in a bad situation. If you recall, I said, I got a call from the minister, and the minister said, we are not going to afford to have any other patient demising now.
Yeah.
So that is the bad situation I was saying. The minister said, we can't move and ensure that we ensure that patients do not demise.
Yes.
And that is the bad situation I'm talking about.
Well, let's take some time and talk about the best situation. Just tell us, what did you find out? What was this bad situation that required patients to be moved immediately
Justice, I'm saying in this instance, the bad situation referred to what the minister said. The minister said, we are in a situation where patients have demised. The patients that have been moved have demised. Now, Barney, move. Make sure that we do not have any patients demising in these NGOs. That's what I'm talking about when I said we are in a bad space. We've got to move these patients from
But
the
you went
NGOs.
there personally, didn't you?
To
the NGOs.
Yes, I went. If I'm to move, I was there and I said, I'm closing you down.
Why did you close them down?
It comes from, I don't want to harp on what my discussion with the minister was. The minister didn't say, go and check if you like the NGO or not. He said we can't afford to have other patients passing away. So go and close those NGOs, and that's what I did.
Yeah, in your own judgment, why did you close the NGOs down? Because the minister said so, or because you perceived real danger to the lives of mental health care users?
Well, at that time, you are having a situation, the media is saying there's a big problem. My opinion doesn't matter here. What matters is that we needed to ensure that we take those patients and put them in our facilities now. That were the hospitals.
Did you go to Precious Angels?
I went there.
I heard you say you also went to the Danville facility of Precious Angels.
I went there also.
There's going to be a lot of detail put to you about the conditions at those two places.
What?
Do you know about those conditions?
I cannot surmise. I went on a Saturday. On a Sunday, I was moving out patients. I didn't spend time there. I just went there and told them I'm moving patients, and I moved patients.
But why did you move the patients?
I don't know, Judge. I'll have to go back again to say,
Yes.
I said we were in a situation where the department had to, with the agreement with the minister, the department could not afford any other.
Is it going to be your evidence? There's going to be a lot of questions. All of these council are ready to ask many questions. But is it going to be your evidence at a high level that the NGOs were the perfect place to move mental health care users?
No, I didn't say that.
That's not going to be your evidence.
I can't say that because even initially I never went to any other NGO. It's not what an HOD would do. I wouldn't go there.
No, a lot of time has passed. With everything that you know now, just give me a high line of what your evidence is going to be. About the conditions at which mental health care users were kept and died.
You want my
They're
opinion?
going to be, I don't want your opinion. You, the HOD, you're the man in charge. You closing down NGOs. The simple question is, why did you do it? You say to me, the minister told me to do it.
We
Okay,
discussed with the minister.
there is an answer, maybe. Then I say to you, when you went to the NGOs, did you walk out there with a smile and say, perfect place to keep the mental health care users?
My point was to remove patients there. I want, even if I don't know, even if I found any other NGO, I would have closed it.
Why?
Firstly, I mean, most probably, I hear what you want me to say. I hear what you want me to say. I don't mean it in a, please forgive me, Judge, if it
I don't
comes
want
out
you to
bad.
say anything, Dr. Selebano. I want the truth and nothing
Nothing
but
else.
the truth. That's my work. That's what I'm about. So all I'm saying is there are going to be many, many questions about each of these NGOs and these counsel have been here for weeks. They know this case backwards and forwards. I just wanted a high line from you. What was this crisis that required patients to be moved urgently? Where the HOD forgets the hierarchy that he told us about this morning and goes there himself and shuts down NGOs. Why did you do it?
That's why probably I said, let me explain. I mean,
Please do.
You are an HOD, and the patients are passing away, and you sit with your MEC and the minister, then a decision is taken. I did explain how that decision came. Let's move the patients. And the area we identified, I remember I went with Professor Rataimani there. I went with Professor Rataimani. He's a psychiatrist. He'll probably be better placed to make that assessment. I went there. We went to another one. I've just forgotten its name, just behind Kalafong Hospital. There's another NGO. It was a Saturday. We spent the whole evening there, running around. And Sunday, I had made up my mind that EMS, you must help me. We want to move the patients.
Why? What made you, head of department, so unhappy? Why do you want to move them?
But I don't know. I've just said it. You want me to make my own opinion, and I'm saying, and I'm not, I must put it openly to you, Judge, and that I'm not protecting anything here. I'm just telling you as you want me to tell the truth. When I arrived there, I informed the lady there that tomorrow I'm taking all the patients out of this place. I went to Denville. She was there again, and I told her, it was in the evening around 8 o'clock now, I remember. I said, I'm taking all the patients. And I phoned the CEOs, and I phoned EMS. I said, be ready, we're taking patients. And that's what we did.
Okay, Doctor, we will come back to that. Understand that's what you did. There'll be a lot of debate about why you did it at a later stage. Counsel, would you proceed?
Thank you. Dr. Selebano, you know, the issue is, I referred you to a portion where you specifically said that I picked up that there were issues. That in itself needs an explanation. What were these issues which you picked up? It can be death.
Why? Why can't it be death?
No, it's fine. Let me put it this way to you.
In fairness, I think refer the witness to
Yes.
the passage, and then let the witness look at the passage, and then you ask the question.
That is line 4, page 17. Dr. Diego Selebano, and I called all the CEOs when I picked up there were issues. And I said we are moving patients from precious agents. Well, that is why this question would keep coming as to why.
But you see, you want to put issues as something else. For me, the issue here was that we were not going to afford to have other patients passing away. That's the issue.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me put it differently to you, is this. Do you accept that there were patients who died at Life's Domain?
You mean?
And who continue to die even today?
Oh, yes.
And Life's Domain was not closed, or patients were not moved from Life's Domain on account of deaths of those patients. Do you accept that?
Yes.
Exactly. So that is the basis of the question. Why move patients from these NGOs on account of death only.
You see, and I'm careful, I want
No,
to raise-
let
I want
me
to
assist. Let me assist you. Let me assist you. Turn to the next page. That is page 18. In line 14.
Sirma.
Let's start at line 9. Dr. Barney Selebano. That is when I dispersed all these patients and emptied precious angels. Subsequent to that, I have done that also on the other instances. I have moved again and moved the patients. I have done that. Then in line 14, Dr. Barney Selebano, I have moved patients from Silma. I have moved all patients. I went there. I was not happy. I moved them out. Do you see that?
But you
So
see, okay.
that is the background we require from you.
No, but we are now talking about Sirma. I think it's Sirma, if I recall. It's somewhere in Hammanskraal.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what do you want? I want to be as respectful as possible, please.
No,
understand.
it's fine. It's fine. Be comfortable. Be comfortable. Don't feel pressured.
No, I just want to show respect to the families and yourselves and the justice here.
And below that, you also record, I found some poor record management from Cullinan. We spoke with the minister. I took out the NGO and gave it back to the hospital. Surely you can't remove patients for poor record management. Is that so?
No, let me explain to you. You see, Cullinan is our hospital.
Yes.
It's a rehab hospital.
Yes.
Now, at Cullinan, you see, and you got to understand that when I drove there, I was speaking to the minister again. He said, go to Cullinan and close Cullinan. And I said, Minister, it's a hospital. It's our rehab institution. I can't close that. When I arrived there was an NGO called Cullinan. The discussion was that things are this and that. But when I arrived, and that's why I said here, there was a problem of record management.
Yes.
Meaning, just an eyeball, you see patients' files in the ward seated where they are not supposed. That's what I meant. I said, no. If people can just put records all over the show, for me, and with the understanding that we need to move people out. So those patients were not actually physically moved. They were not. What I did, I said to the lady from Anchor, I said, from now on, you are no longer responsible for these patients. Then I called the CEO. I said, CEO, you are now, I'm telling you now, you've got to take over these patients. They were in the ward inside Cullinan. That's what happened. So there was no physical movement of those patients. Yeah.
Yes. Let me, I think, broaden this topic, I think, a little bit more by making reference to what was brought to your attention by the professor in the interview. On page 19 of the same document, and from line 10, the professor says to you, well, let me ask you, Barney, and this is a very interesting thing that you come with this information. You see, these NGOs were all licensed. Then you say, yeah. Then in line 14, the question is asked, so how come the NGOs are licensed and suddenly they are unsuitable to host the patients for whom they are licensed for? So the question still remains, why move these patients from this NGO? What were the problems other than them dying?
I mean, I'm sorry, with due respect to you. I don't.
Why close them down? Why close these NGOs down?
You see, unless you understand that when and I think we're going to have to reach that understanding that when we had a discussion at a political level, a decision was made that, you know, we need to close some of these NGOs.
Political discussion, tell me about that.
I did say.
Amongst whom?
I did say that the MEC, it started with the Premier, not the Premier rather, the Minister, who said we need to move patients.
Okay.
We cannot afford to have any more patients
So that is a
passing
political
away.
discussion.
Yeah, I wouldn't discuss anything unless with the Minister. Our relationship is he's the political head, I am an administrator.
Sure. Understand that. So you say with that political discussion, what did you do next?
I said, Minister, please, I will do that. I will go and close the NGOs to ensure that we don't have anybody passing away. Then, but you need to help me also by writing a letter or informing the MEC that this is the line of action that must be taken. And that was done.
But the passage which you are referred to is about licensing of NGOs. And council puts to you that Professor Makhoba asked you very pertinently, how come licensed NGOs turn so bad so quickly? Can you see the question? And you proffer an answer, opposite line 18. Professor Makhoba asks you, line 13. So how come the NGOs are licensed and suddenly they are unsuitable to host the patients for whom they are licensed? And there's an answer there provided by you. But the question pops up again today.
No, but if you look, just with due respect,
Yes.
yeah, please.
The question pops up today, and that's what council is asking you. How do licensed NGO quickly convert to death traps?
But even here, I didn't even offer any opinion or you know, to say I went to an NGO and assessed it. I didn't offer that
I understand
opinion.
that. I'm asking
Yeah.
you today now. I know you were asked the question, I've seen your answer, and I won't tell you what my view is about the answer, but what I'm asking you now, how do licensed NGOs, within months, sometimes within weeks, as the evidence to be put to you in time, turn so bad so quickly that you have to rush and get patients out of their clasps?
Okay.
Can you engage that question?
Yeah, I can engage the question. I can give my opinion and nothing else. It will be my opinion. Well, the team led by Dr. Manamela obviously went to the NGOs, different NGOs, checked them, assessed them, and I'm just giving my opinion. And then went on to sit according to themselves that these NGOs are okay. That's according to themselves. And then if just as a small diagram, if you had to ask me, I wouldn't even know how to assess an NGO because it's their space. They are the ones who know how to do these things. So they went there and made up their minds and their opinions that these NGOs are fine. Your question is, now what transpired in between where these NGOs really went according to what is now known that they were bad? It's very difficult for me to openly say, but what I can surmise, Justice, it could be that One, perhaps, and that is just a perhaps, they were not properly assessed, or the issue of fit for purpose was not considered. My impression was that some patients were moved to, that's my impression. I will not want anybody. If I'm pressed, I'll be careful.
You know, Dr. Selebano, you will be pressed quite a lot on that. You see, you are HOD. You are head of the department. You are accounting officer. Your troops are out there to do your bidding. A plan you signed under your hand, authorized. And within months, people die. They lose their lives. So yours is not an opinion of some innocent bystander. You are the general here. You, the guy who commands the troops, who owe you a duty of accountability. So you can't get us down a path of my opinion.
No.
Don't you understand that?
I hear you, Justice.
You are the guy in charge. You're not the guy who just gets told, oh, some people died there. You, the guy who has the duty to look after their lives.
Yeah.
What is your response?
You, in a broad sense, you're correct, but you're summarizing the job of an HOD in a different way. You are, at any given point in time, any other HOD, you can ask any other HOD. It wouldn't be feasible. What you are saying, it would never be feasible. That the HOD will know whether the medication has been given at Charlotte, whether an operation has been done, whether the clinic is this. It's not practically possible to know that.
We're going to come to know what is practically possible over quite a time, but it's tea time, I think.
It's tea time, Justice Msaneka.
Doctor, let them show you where you can find tea. And we're going to be back at 12 o'clock to continue with this. We are adjourned.
Thank you.